Negreanu, back around to Polk. Do you find the call here? Ask yourself, in your heart of heart, your opponent wants to go all in for $31,000. Do you find the call with the pocket tens? Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I'm back with another hand from the 200-400 no-limit Texas Hold'em battle between Doug Polk and Daniel Negreanu. Doug Polk is currently up a decent amount, about $500,000, a whopping 12 buy-ins. Is that right? It's only 12 buy-ins? Guess it is. Well, there's a lot of swings in no-limit Hold'em. There's a lot of poker yet to be played. All right. Here, Doug Polk wakes up with the pocket tens he raises. Negreanu 3 bets. The ace queen of hearts, perfectly fine. Perfectly standard. Not much to see here. Doug Polk 4 bets. Puts in the 4 bet with the pocket tens. This is also perfectly fine. Pocket tens is a good hand. Heads up. You should be happy getting your money in, especially if your opponent 3 bets a little bit too often. We saw Daniel Negreanu recently put in a 3 bet with the Jack 4 suited. If they're 3 betting the Jack 4 suited, you might as well put in the 4 bet with the pocket tens just straight up for value. Negreanu does call. All this pre-flop play is perfectly fine and standard. We see a flop which gives Daniel Negreanu pretty much the nuts, and he elects to check. And this is a spot where I think that most players opt to check as a default. But interestingly enough, if we take a look at Negreanu's range, we actually see that he should be leading a large portion of the time on this flop, 67% of the time. We've actually seen Doug Polk lead in similar scenarios like this to great success because Doug Polk correctly realizes this type of queen high flop really nails his range. I mean, take a look at this. Look at Negreanu's range here. Ace queen, queen jack, queen 10, aces. Right? All these hands are very, very strong, and that allows the out of position player to lead in this situation, which is kind of abnormal, right? You typically don't see this happening, but heads up, sometimes the ranges line up just like this, and that allows the out of position player to lead. However, Negreanu does not lead in this spot. It's seen so far in this match, at least from my point of view, the outside observer here, that Doug Polk seems to not really be trying to exploit Daniel Negreanu all that much. It seems like he's instead just trying to play good, fundamentally sound poker, and he has been doing that amazingly well. In this situation, if Negreanu does not lead ever, what should the pocket tens do? Well, it turns out they should actually check behind. But if Daniel Negreanu opts to lead sometimes, when he does check, his range is much weaker, which then allows the pocket tens to bet about half the time, right? So if Negreanu uses this strategy where he's mostly betting his ace queens, it means when he checks, he has fewer ace queen, queen jack type hands, right? So he's going to have more hands like ace jack, ace 10, king 10, 10 9, pocket nines, right? In which case, we see the pocket tens is actually in pretty good shape. But it's hard to know exactly what strategy Negreanu is using here because so far, given his play, he really has not led in this scenario much at all. Given he hasn't led in this scenario much at all, I have to presume he's just not leading here. If he's not leading here, Doug Polk should check behind with pretty much his entire range because Negreanu's checking range is actually going to be quite strong in this scenario. Okay? However, I do think Doug Polk is just trying to play roughly what the solver says. Solver presumes there's leading here, therefore, whenever the opponent checks, pocket tens gets to bet about half the time. Doug Polk does go for the small bet, which is perfectly fine and viable. Then Negreanu does go for the call. Take a look at this. Ace-queen actually raises a lot of the time here, and it turns out there is a pretty decent amount of raising in this scenario in general, about 25% of the time, and a whole lot of calling as well, just because you're facing such a small flop bet, right? Remember, in this scenario, Doug Polk did bet only 20% pot. Facing a tiny bet, you do have to stick around quite wide. It is worth noting the ace-queen of hearts always calls here, and that's because you don't want to raise and let Doug Polk fold out a hand that's drawing thin to dead, like ace-jack of spades or something like that, right? You really, really, really want him in with hands like that. Let's make sure that's even in his range before we move forward. I'm sure the comments will go nuts. He does have some ace-jack suited. Okay, there you go. How about ace-king, right? You really want him in with the ace-king. You really want him in with the pocket tens. You really want him in with all these weak ace-x offsuits. As you see, the GTO strategy has Doug Polk 4-betting all of these hands like a tiny, tiny sliver of the time, about 4% of the time. So I know it's not a ton of his range, but it is, all of these hands make up a tiny portion. Anyway, check, bet, call on the flop. On the turn, Negreanu checks. And now, what should Doug Polk do? Take a second, think about it. Should he check, bet small, like 10,000, bet medium, like 20,000, or bet humongous, like all in? Go ahead, pause the video, type your answer below in the comment section. I'm going to wait a second, give you a second to do that. Go ahead, do it. Did you do it? I hope you did. Are you back? Okay, click like, click subscribe. I would appreciate it. This is an interactive stream. You have to type in the comments to be here. You have to click the like and subscribe button. Click the notification button. Why not? Click all the buttons. Don't click the exit button in the top right-hand corner or top left-hand corner if you're on a Mac. That'll close everything. Don't do that. Just click the like buttons. Okay. Negreanu checks here, and then Doug Polk goes for another tiny, tiny bet, smaller than the option I even gave you. And let's take a look at what the solver does here. Is this solver approved? On the turn, it turns out Doug Polk actually should be betting small with these pocket tens a large portion of the time, which is really, really neat to see, right? I would not have thought Doug Polk should be betting in this scenario, but like I said, Doug Polk seems to have a very, very solid understanding of GTO poker, and he seems to make very, very excellent plays that are very, very close to what the solver does. And if you take a look at this, there really are a decent amount of hands betting small here, and I'm kind of surprised to see that, but I guess that's just what happens in 4-bet pots is you have aces and kings in your range, right? And they don't necessarily need to bet huge, although they do bet pretty big about half the time. But that allows you to bet small with a lot of other reasonably strong hands. So he does go for the small bet. Back around to Negreanu. I think he can either call or go all in this scenario. At this point, he has a really, really good hand. He wants to get money in the pot. I think both plays are probably fine. If we look at ace-queen suited, which are mostly hearts here at this point because he raises most of the other ace-queens earlier in the hand on the flop, you see that mostly calls, but it does check raise. Sometimes the raise size is all in, so this is fine for Negreanu. Back around to Polk. Do you find the call here? Ask yourself, in your heart of heart, your opponent wants to go all in for $31,000. Do you find the call with the pocket tens? Well, let's see what the solver does. Let's see what the robot overlords do. The robot overlords call with the pocket tens. No problem. No problem. Call it off pocket tens. Easy game. Also notice they call with ace-8 and king-8, right? They also call with any queen, of course. They call it 10-8 a lot of the time if you have it. 10-8, by the way, is a junky middle pair here. So this is a spot where the solver actually finds a pretty good amount of hero calls, like a shockingly high amount of hero calls in this spot. And you may say, why in the world is it doing that? Well, depends on the ranges that have been inputted before. But at this point, it probably presumes Negreanu has a decent amount of draws available, right? And if he has a decent amount of draws available, you just can't fold any sort of decent made hand. Also, Doug Polk's getting pretty good pot odds, right? He has to put in 23,000 to win a pot that's going to go up to about, 75,000 or 85,000, something like that. So he doesn't actually need to win all that often. It's one of these dicey spots where you don't like to have pocket tens here, but you got to make the call. And Doug Polk does make the call. And it's interesting to see that if we essentially played this hand out as the solver recommends, Doug Polk perfectly played this hand by the book. I mean, to be fair, Negreanu did too, besides perhaps he should be leading it on the flop. But it is worth noting that if Negreanu has no flop leading range, if we go all the way back to the flop, really is a key point in this hand. If Negreanu never leads the flop, as I don't actually think he is, Doug Polk should actually check behind with the tens every time. And if it goes check, check on the flop, that actually results in Doug Polk maybe not getting stacked in this hand. He's probably going to get stacked, but maybe not. To be fair, if it goes check, check on the flop, Negreanu bets this turn. Doug Polk's going to call, of course. Negreanu's going to bet small on the turn. Polk's going to call. River's going to come king of hearts. Negreanu's going to bet. Doug Polk, I'm not going to say he's necessarily going to fold, but he very easily could find a fold there and not have lost his stack in this scenario. So if potentially, Doug Polk, who's clearly world-class heads-up player, way better than me at heads-up poker, says, all right, I know Negreanu is never leading the flop, therefore I should check it back. If he knows that, perhaps he saves a little bit of money here, given this particular run out. That said, when you do check it back with the tens here, it's not like you're thinking, oh man, I'm beat, I'm scared, I'm trying to fold. Instead, you're just trying to essentially, control the size of the pot, give your opponent every possible opportunity to bluff, and go from there. Because apparently, in 4-bet pots, queen high flops are really, really good for the out of position caller. Cool stuff. So that's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, click the subscribe button. If you want more high-level educational poker content, check out my site, pokercoaching.com. I have educational content there from many of the absolute best players in the world. So check it out if you want to improve your tournament or cash game skills. That's all there for you. Good luck in your games. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more strategy lessons, pre-flop charts, and interactive quizzes, make sure you get your free membership to pokercoaching.com right now at pokercoaching.com/free. I'll talk to you next time.